Hello and welcome. Tonight we will gently explore the best way to learn a new skill in a calm and soothing journey that you can listen to as you drift off to sleep. There's no need to focus too hard or remember every detail. Simply allow the words to wash over you softly. As you settle into comfort, let your mind relax. We'll wander through the art and science of learning, sharing insights and stories that span from ancient wisdom to modern discoveries, all presented in a peaceful bedtime storytelling style. Learning something new can be a wonderful adventure. It doesn't have to be rushed or stressful. In this quiet narrative, imagine we're taking a slow nighttime walk through a moonlit garden of knowledge. Together, we'll uncover how humans learn best, how practice and patience help us grow, and why a gentle, persistent approach can make all the difference. Whether you're hoping to pick up a musical instrument, speak a new language, master a sport, or any other skill, the principles we talk about will softly apply to all. As you listen, feel free to let go of any worries about progress or performance. This time is for you to relax. Let each thought come and go like a soft breeze. Even if you drift in and out of sleep, that's okay. Your mind can still absorb some of these ideas in the background, letting them settle in your subconscious. So get cozy under the blankets, close your eyes if you haven't already, and allow yourself to sink into calmness. We'll begin our journey now, exploring the best ways to learn and grow, one peaceful step at a time. The ancient art of learning. Since ancient times, people have understood that experience is the best teacher. Thousands of years ago, wise observers realized that we truly learn by doing. The Greek philosopher Aristotle wisely noted that for the things we must learn to do, we learn them by actually doing them. In other words, a person becomes a builder by building, a lyre player by playing the lyre. Practice is how we gain skill. Likewise, an old proverb tells us, I hear and I forget, I see and I remember, I do and I understand. These words, echoed across cultures, gently affirm that active involvement solidifies knowledge far more deeply than passive observation. Imagine an apprentice in a bygone era, perhaps a young person in a potter's workshop or a blacksmith's forge. Day after day, the apprentice watches the master's hands, learning each motion. Before long, the apprentice tries those tasks themselves, shaping clay or hammering iron under careful guidance. Mistakes are made, certainly, but each mistake is a quiet teacher. Over time, the apprentice's movements grow more confident and skillful. In medieval guilds and workshops, this learning by doing was the way every craft was mastered. It was slow and steady, often taking years of patient repetition. But eventually, the apprentice would become a master too, passing on the craft to the next generation in the same gentle way. Even today, some traditions carry echoes of those methods. For example, in Japan, it's said that an apprentice sushi chef might spend months or even years just learning to prepare the rice perfectly before being allowed to work with fish, a practice that instills patience and respect for mastering fundamentals. Throughout history, whether one was learning to farm, to paint, or to play a musical instrument, the pattern was much the same. Instruction and theory had their place, but real mastery grew from hands-on practice. A novice painter in the Renaissance might study under an established artist, mixing pigments and copying sketches for countless hours to grasp the techniques. A young musician in an ancient court would practice scales and simple melodies over and over, day after day, training fingers and ears in unison. Even martial arts were taught through repeated drills and forms, the student learning each stance and movement through continuous practice until they flowed without thought. This ancient wisdom, that practice and repetition form the core of learning, has truly stood the test of time. Practice makes perfect, we often say, or perhaps more accurately, practice makes progress. Every expert was once a beginner, as the saying goes. The masters of old understood that expertise isn't bestowed in a moment of inspiration. It is earned quietly, gradually, through many small efforts. With each attempt, the skill is refined a little more, like a stone being polished slowly until it shines. As we begin our exploration, let's carry this simple lesson with us. To learn any new skill, we must be willing to do it, to repeat it, and to be a beginner at first. This idea is ancient, yet it remains profoundly true. It will gently guide us through the more detailed insights and techniques that came in later eras. For now, you can picture those early apprentices and scholars, patiently honing their crafts by lamplight or by the morning sun, learning step by step in the most natural way. The foundation of all learning is laid in these small, earnest steps. In that spirit, we continue onward on our journey through the ages of learning. Early scientific insights, centuries past, and the tradition of learning by doing continued as the main way skills were passed down. But it wasn't until much later, in the 19th century, that people began to formally study how we learn. In the late 1800s, a German psychologist named Hermann Ebbinghaus undertook some of the first scientific experiments on memory and learning. Imagine him in his study, repeatedly testing himself with lists of nonsensical syllables to see how much he remembered over time. Through these careful trials, Ebbinghaus discovered patterns in how we forget and remember. He found that new information tends to fade quickly from our minds if we don't review it. This became known as the forgetting curve, a gentle reminder that without practice or repetition, even things we thought we learned can slip away. Importantly, Ebbinghaus also found a hopeful insight. If we space out our practice or review sessions, we retain knowledge much better. For example, if you learn something and then revisit it the next day and again a few days later and so on, each reminder strengthens the memory and slows down forgetting. This is called the spacing effect. It confirmed what good teachers and learners intuitively knew, that returning to a skill or lesson periodically instead of cramming it all at once leads to more enduring learning. In everyday terms, practicing a little bit each day or each week is far more effective than one long intensive session and then nothing. Our brains seem to prefer this steady nourishment of information, much like a plant grows best with regular watering rather than a single deluge. Around the same period, other thinkers were exploring learning through the lens of behavior and habit. Psychologists like Edward Thorndike observed how animals learn to solve simple puzzles by trial and error. In one famous experiment, a cat learned to escape a puzzle box faster and faster by remembering which actions previously led to freedom. From such studies came the idea of the learning curve, the gradual improvement in performance with practice. Often progress is quick at first and then slows down as we reach higher levels of skill. Perhaps you've felt this when learning something new. The first steps yield noticeable improvement, then gains become more subtle as you approach mastery. Knowing this is normal can be comforting. It means plateaus in learning are a natural part of the process, and with patience they too can be overcome. By the early 20th century, researchers like Ivan Pavlov and B.F. Skinner were digging deeper into how practice and feedback shape learning. Pavlov showed that even dogs could learn to associate a sound with food through repetition, a simple form of learning by association. Skinner, focusing on behaviors, found that rewarding a correct action increases the likelihood of it being repeated. These findings echoed what coaches and mentors have long done: give encouragement or rewards for progress, correct mistakes gently, and thereby guide the learner toward better performance. If an archer hits the target, the satisfying thud of the arrow and a word of praise reinforce the skill. If they miss, gentle correction and the desire to do better next time spurs them to adjust and try again. Through repetition and feedback, habits form. Over time, the actions that lead to success become ingrained, almost automatic. What all these early scientific insights taught us was really a reinforcement of ancient wisdom, now backed by data. Practice matters, and the way we practice matters too. Repetition strengthens memory, spacing out practice protects against forgetting, and feedback guides improvement. It might sound obvious to us today, but having the scientific language to describe these effects helped educators refine teaching methods. Schools slowly began to incorporate drills and reviews spread over time. For instance, understanding that a little review each day worked better than a single exam at the end. And beyond formal study, anyone trying to learn a skill could take heart that the slow, steady approach truly had merit. It wasn't just tradition or anecdote, but something fundamental about how our brains work. So by the early 1900s, we see a convergence of the old and the new, the age-old habits of practice and apprenticeship, now illuminated by research. It set the stage for even deeper explorations into the mind and how we learn. With a foundation in place, that practice, repetition, and feedback are key. The next question became, are there even better ways to practice? What is happening in our minds when we learn? And how can we use that knowledge to learn more effectively? The journey of understanding learning was just beginning, and it would continue throughout the 20th century and into our present day, revealing ever more about the best ways to acquire new skills. Learning by observation and social influence. Learning does not happen in isolation. Even as scientists were mapping out practice and memory, others were discovering the importance of observing and interacting with others in the learning process. In the mid-20th century, psychologist Albert Bandura conducted a series of famous experiments that revealed just how powerful observational learning can be. In one study, children watched a teacher or adult model demonstrate a new behavior. In Bandura's case, the adult played aggressively with a Bobo doll, a large inflatable toy. Later, when it was the children's turn to play, many of them imitated the exact actions they had seen, even without anyone explicitly teaching or rewarding them. This and other studies showed that people, especially children, learn a great deal simply by watching others. We don't always need to learn by trial and error ourselves. Sometimes we learn by seeing someone else do something first. Think about how you might have learned everyday skills. Tying your shoelaces, perhaps you watched a parent's hands loop the laces and then tried to mimic it. Or consider a new worker learning a craft by shadowing an experienced colleague on the job, picking up techniques just from observation before ever attempting it themselves. Humans are natural imitators. Our brains are tuned to soak up patterns from others. There's a comforting lesson here. If you have access to a good example or a mentor to observe, you can accelerate your learning. Simply watching a skilled person perform a task, whether it's cooking a recipe, painting a picture, or playing a difficult piece of music, leaves an imprint. Later, when you attempt the skill, that mental image guides you. It's as if a trail has been blazed in your mind, showing you the way. Beyond just copying actions, observing others also shapes our beliefs about learning. Bandura introduced the concept of self-efficacy, which is the confidence in our own ability to achieve something. If we see someone else accomplish a skill, especially someone we relate to, it gently whispers to us, if they can do it, maybe I can too. Our belief in our capacity grows. Likewise, encouragement from a mentor or peers can bolster our self-efficacy. On the other hand, harsh criticism or seeing repeated failures can undermine it. Over time, psychologists realized that nurturing a positive belief in one's ability, having faith that I can learn this with effort, actually improves learning outcomes. A person who believes they can improve will generally put in more effort and persist longer, while someone convinced they just aren't good at this is more likely to give up early. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Thus, the social environment and our own mindset intertwine with the pure mechanics of practice. We can imagine a supportive learning scenario, perhaps a dance instructor demonstrating a sequence slowly for students. The students watch intently, absorbing the movements. When they try it themselves, the instructor smiles and says, "Yes, like that, you're getting it." The student's confidence grows from the combination of seeing how to do it and receiving positive feedback. In contrast, if an instructor only pointed out mistakes or never showed how it's done, learning would be slower and filled with uncertainty. The best teachers throughout history, whether masters teaching apprentices or modern educators, often exemplify the skills for their students and provide gentle guidance, thus merging observation with practice. This understanding reminds us that we don't learn in a vacuum. Seeking out models to emulate can be a powerful strategy. If you want to learn a new skill, it may help to watch others who are already good at it. Watch a seasoned gardener tend to plants if you want to learn gardening. Watch an accomplished pianist's hands move across the keys if you aim to play piano. Your brain will begin forming a template, a mental representation of what the skill looks like in action. Later, as you practice yourself, that template will help you adjust and refine your own technique. Additionally, being mindful of self-belief is crucial. Encourage yourself as a friend would. Replace thoughts like, "I'll never get this," with gentler ones like, I'm learning. It's okay to take time. If you have the opportunity, surround yourself with people who believe in growth and learning. Their influence can quietly strengthen your own resolve. Remember that confidence is not about knowing it all from the start. It's about trusting that you can learn it step by step, just as others have done. By understanding the social and observational side of learning, we add another tool to our gentle toolkit for mastering skills. We see that having role models, mentors, or peers can inspire and guide us. We recognize that believing in ourselves is not just a feel-good notion, but a practical asset that makes learning smoother and more resilient. And all these insights fit naturally with what we already know about practice. Watching others doesn't replace doing the work ourselves. But it gives us direction and motivation when we do practice. It's like being shown a lighthouse on the shore before we navigate the waters. With that light to guide us, we sail on a bit more confidently into the sea of learning. The mind strategies. As psychology entered the latter half of the 20th century, researchers became increasingly interested in the internal processes of the mind during learning. This shift was often called the cognitive revolution, as the focus turned toward understanding memory, thought, and strategies for learning. Scientists and educators alike began asking, are there ways we can practice smarter, not just harder? What techniques help us grasp and retain complex skills or information? One key idea that emerged is the concept of breaking skills or knowledge into smaller components, often referred to as chunking. Our minds can only handle so much new information at once. By grouping related bits into a chunk, we effectively make more room in our working memory. For example, when learning a long phone number, people naturally break it into shorter segments rather than trying to remember a string of 10 digits. Similarly, if you are learning to play a piece of music, you might practice it bar by bar or phrase by phrase. A dancer learns a routine by rehearsing it in sections. By focusing on one small part at a time, mastering it, and then linking it with the next part, learning becomes much more manageable. Over time, these chunks meld together into a fluid whole. What once was a dozen disjointed steps becomes one graceful sequence in the mind and body. Another useful strategy is visualization or mental practice. Surprisingly, merely imagining yourself performing a skill can lead to real improvements. Athletes have long used this technique. A diver might mentally rehearse each twist and tuck of a dive repeatedly before actually jumping, or a basketball player might visualize free throws swishing through the net. Research has shown that such mental rehearsals activate many of the same neural pathways as the actual physical practice. If you vividly imagine playing a piano piece, your brain's motor regions can light up in a similar pattern as if your fingers were truly on the keys. While mental practice isn't a substitute for physical practice, it is a gentle supplement. It's especially helpful in reinforcing a sequence or preparing for a performance when you can't physically be practicing every moment. It also engages your concentration deeply. In your mind's eye, you can focus on perfecting the detail without any physical fatigue. Our brains also benefit from using multiple ways to engage with material, echoing some of what we touched on with observational learning. If you can involve different senses or modes of thinking, you create more connections in your memory. Suppose you want to learn a new language vocabulary word. You could just read it off a list. That's one approach. But consider a richer approach. You could listen to how it's pronounced, see it written down, speak it aloud yourself, and even write it down by hand. Perhaps you pair the word with a little doodle or a mental image that represents its meaning. Each of these actions, seeing, saying, hearing, doing, reinforces the word in your mind. You're essentially weaving a stronger fabric of memory by using many threads. If one thread slips, maybe you forget the sound, another thread, the image or the motion of writing, can help pull the memory back. During this cognitive revolution era, educators developed techniques like mind mapping, visually diagramming ideas to see connections, mnemonic devices, little memory tricks like using acronyms or rhymes to remember information, and active recall practice, testing yourself on the material rather than just rereading it. All of these methods share a common theme. They engage the learner more actively and often in multiple ways. Rather than passively reading a textbook and hoping it sinks in, the learner is encouraged to interact with the material, to categorize it, to question it, to express it in their own words, or to associate it with something known. Each such interaction is a form of practice for the mind. Consider a concrete scenario. You are learning about constellations in the night sky. A passive approach would be to stare at a star chart and try to memorize which star patterns correspond to which names. An active, multi-strategy approach would be to go outside and locate one constellation, engaging spatial and visual memory, then recall a story or myth associated with it, engaging narrative memory, maybe drawing it out or tracing the pattern in the air with your finger, kinesthetic engagement, and quizzing yourself on it the next night. By doing these varied yet complementary activities, you've not only learned the constellation's name and shape, but you've also tied it to a context and a physical experience. Another example, if you are studying a process, like how a bill becomes a law, you might read about it, then draw a flowchart from memory, then perhaps teach the process aloud as if explaining to a friend. That last step, teaching someone else or just pretending to, is often lauded as one of the most effective ways to solidify knowledge. When you teach, you identify gaps in your own understanding quickly and reinforce the concepts by articulation. It's the old idea of to truly learn something, teach it. Even if you have no actual pupil, explaining the concept to an imaginary audience or writing about it in a journal can be a form of practice for your brain. Through these cognitive strategies, we learn that how we approach learning tasks can dramatically affect the outcome. It's not only about the hours put in, but also about the methods used during those hours. For any skill or subject, experimenting with such techniques, chunking the material, employing visualization, mixing verbal, visual, and physical modes, self-quizzing, and even teaching can make learning more effective and even more enjoyable. They keep the mind engaged and often break the monotony that can come with plain repetition. As we weave these mental strategies into our toolkit, the process of learning a new skill becomes less daunting. We can tackle it piece by piece, use our imagination to support our practice, and engage fully with the material. These approaches remind us that learning is an active, creative process, not just a passive absorption. We become participants in our learning journey, sculpting our understanding in many gentle ways. The mind is not a vessel to be filled in a single pour, but a landscape to be cultivated with varied experiences and activities. With patience and these strategies, the landscape of our knowledge and skills grows rich and robust. Quality over quantity, the value of deliberate practice. By the late 20th century, as researchers studied world-class performers in fields like music, sports, and chess, an important realization emerged. It's not just the number of hours you practice, but how you practice. That truly matters. Simply going through the motions for a long time can lead to a plateau where you stop improving. But a concept known as deliberate practice can break through these plateaus. Deliberate practice means practicing with a clear purpose and focus on improvement, often targeting the edge of your current abilities. Imagine two people learning the guitar. One might casually strum familiar songs for an hour each day. They put in plenty of time and enjoy themselves, but they may notice after a while that they're not getting much better at difficult chords or new techniques. Another person spends that same hour a bit differently. They identify a challenging chord change that always trips them up and spend time drilling that transition slowly and correctly. They play with a metronome to improve their timing, paying close attention to when they falter. When they master it at a slow speed, they gradually increase the tempo. They also record themselves occasionally or seek feedback to hear where their playing could be smoother. This second person is engaging in deliberate practice, zeroing in on specific weaknesses and working intently to improve them rather than just playing what they already know. The late psychologist K. Anders Ericsson, who studied expert performers, found that top musicians, for example, spent a lot of their practice time on difficult sections of music, sometimes practicing a single phrase over and over until it was just right. They didn't simply play through entire pieces mindlessly. They focused on the hard parts, often under the guidance of a teacher who could provide immediate feedback. This kind of practice is effortful and mentally demanding. It requires concentration and a willingness to be a bit uncomfortable because you're constantly stretching yourself beyond your current level. It's not always as immediately fun as just playing around, which is why even skilled individuals often only do a few hours of such highly focused practice per day before their mind and body need a rest. But those few hours, done consistently, lead to remarkable growth. One might recall the popular notion that 10,000 hours of practice will make you an expert. This idea was inspired by research on musicians, but what often gets lost is that those hours have to be of quality practice to count. 10,000 hours of half-hearted repetition won't guarantee expertise, but a smaller number of hours of truly deliberate, mindful practice can lead to significant improvement. Of course, not everyone's goal is to become a world-class expert. You may simply want to become good enough to enjoy a hobby. Deliberate practice is still useful there. It's essentially about making the most of whatever time you choose to invest. It means you engage with full presence and push yourself gently beyond where you are comfortable. Deliberate practice also often involves setting specific goals or sub-goals. Rather than saying, "I'll practice piano tonight," one might say, "Tonight I will practice the left-hand accompaniment of this song until I can play it at tempo." Or, "I will try to improve the accuracy of my serve in tennis practice by focusing on my toss for 30 minutes. These clear objectives help direct attention. After the session, you can reflect, did I improve? And what will I focus on next time? Another element of deliberate practice is feedback, which we touched upon earlier. Sometimes feedback comes from within, by actively noticing errors and adjusting. Other times it comes from a coach, teacher, or even a friend who can observe you. Without feedback, we could practice the same mistake over and over and inadvertently get very good at doing something the wrong way. With feedback, we can correct course and make sure we're reinforcing positive patterns. It's worth noting that deliberate practice can be mentally tiring. It asks us to operate at the edge of our current capacity, where we make more mistakes and have to concentrate hard. That's why, as mentioned, elite performers typically cannot sustain it for extremely long durations in one go. Short, focused sessions often yield better results than marathon practices filled with fatigue and distraction. This ties back to the idea of rest. After you've pushed your brain or body with intensive, focused practice, a break or a good sleep is even more beneficial, allowing that hard-won improvement to set in. For those learning a new skill in everyday life, applying the idea of deliberate practice means being intentional. If you're learning to draw, you might devote part of your practice time to just drawing hands, if hands are what challenge you, studying them carefully rather than sketching whatever you always find easy. If you're learning a language, instead of only reviewing words you already know, you spend extra time on the pronunciation that troubles you, perhaps recording yourself and comparing it to a native speaker's speech. It might feel a bit uncomfortable to focus on our weak spots, but that's where the most growth happens. However, deliberate practice should be balanced with more playful, relaxed engagement too. Constant, intense focus can lead to burnout. Think of it like seasoning in cooking, a powerful ingredient best used in measured doses. You might spend a focused half hour working on those tough guitar chord changes, deliberate practice, and then spend another half hour just jamming and playing songs you enjoy, casual practice, to remind yourself why you love guitar in the first place. The casual playing maintains your general skills and happiness, while the focused practice drives improvement in specific areas. By understanding the value of quality practice, we empower ourselves to learn efficiently. It's reassuring to know that you can make more progress in even 15 minutes of truly focused effort than in an hour of unfocused repetition. This is not to rush learning. It still takes time and patience, but to illuminate a path where our energy is used effectively. In our calm exploration of learning, this concept of deliberate practice encourages us to practice not just more, but smarter. With a thoughtful, attentive approach, each practice session, however short, becomes a meaningful step toward improvement. And as always, when we finish such a session, we step back, rest, and let our minds and bodies absorb the gains, ready to build on them next time. Mindset and motivation. The technical aspects of practice and strategy are essential, but equally important is the mindset we bring to learning and the motivation that keeps us going. In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, psychologists like Carol Dweck began to explore how our beliefs about ability influence our learning. Dweck coined the terms fixed mindset and growth mindset. In a fixed mindset, people believe that skills and intelligence are more or less set. You either have a talent for something or you don't. In a growth mindset, people believe that abilities can be developed over time through effort and learning. Research showed that those with a growth mindset tend to embrace challenges, persist in the face of setbacks, and ultimately learn more effectively, because they see failure not as a verdict on their innate ability, but as a stepping stone to improvement. Consider two students trying to solve a difficult puzzle. One with a fixed mindset might struggle and think, "I'm just not good at this, so there's no point in continuing." The other with a growth mindset might think, "I haven't figured it out yet, but if I keep at it or try a new strategy, I can learn to solve this." The latter student is much more likely to push forward and eventually succeed. The only difference is their belief about learning. This is a gentle reminder to all of us. When learning something new, our self-talk matters. Try to approach the skill with an attitude of curiosity and resilience. I might not be good at it now, but I can become better with time and practice. Indeed, we're all, as someone once said, bad at everything before we're good at it. Every expert started out clumsy and unsure. Hand in hand with mindset is the role of motivation, our reasons for learning and the joy or frustration we experience in the process. Motivation can come from within, intrinsic, or from outside rewards, goals, extrinsic. Perhaps you want to learn guitar purely for the love of music. That's intrinsic motivation. Or maybe you want to learn a new programming skill to get a better job. That's more extrinsic, a reward-driven motivation. Both types of motivation can play a part in successful learning. What matters is how we harness them. If you love what you're doing, that passion will carry you through the rough patches. You'll practice longer because it doesn't feel like a chore. But even if the task itself isn't always fun, you can motivate yourself by keeping your goal in mind. For example, envisioning yourself communicating fluently in the language you're studying, or remembering why that certification will be a meaningful step for you. One thing to be careful about is pressure and mindset around motivation. If we push ourselves with harsh expectations, or if we feel coerced, motivation can wither. It's often better to frame goals in positive terms. I want to do this because it will open new possibilities, or because I find it fascinating, rather than negative ones. I must do this, or I'm a failure. Even when using external motivations, it helps to internalize them so they feel like our own choice. For instance, you might not be intrinsically thrilled about every practice session for a skill you need at work, but you can tell yourself, I choose to practice because I know it will help me grow and reach the outcome I care about. This way, you remain in charge of your learning journey. Another component of a healthy learning mindset is embracing mistakes and imperfection. This can be hard, especially for adults who are used to feeling competent in other areas of life. Starting a new skill often means feeling a bit inept at first. That's perfectly normal. Think of a toddler learning to walk. They tumble down many times, yet they aren't embarrassed or discouraged by those falls. They often giggle, pull themselves back up, and try again and again. In fact, each fall is teaching their muscles and brain how to balance better next time. We might take inspiration from that childlike resilience. When you make a mistake, try to view it as information, not as a judgment of your ability. A mistake is simply showing you where you can adjust or what you can focus on next. One way to stay motivated and positive is to track small wins. Notice the little milestones. The first time you manage a complete song on the guitar, even if it's slow, the first simple conversation you have in that new language, or even the first time you attempt a recipe without checking the instructions constantly. By celebrating these small steps, you give yourself a sense of progress. It's like giving your brain a gentle pat on the back, saying, yes, we're getting somewhere. This reinforces your intrinsic motivation. Some people keep a journal of their practice sessions or a log of what they've learned. Looking back after a few weeks or months can reveal progress that felt invisible day to day. It's also helpful to remember the reasons you embarked on this learning journey in the first place. If at times you feel stuck or discouraged, pause and remind yourself, why did I want to learn this skill? Was it for enjoyment, for personal growth, for opportunity, or perhaps to connect with others? Bringing that original spark back into your mind can reignite your enthusiasm. If the reason was purely practical and not inherently exciting, if you pick an aspect of the learning process to enjoy, maybe you don't love the skill yet, but you enjoy the challenge of learning itself, or you enjoy the break it gives you from other routine tasks, or you appreciate the fact that you're exercising your brain. Finding even a small source of enjoyment or pride can make a big difference in staying motivated. Finally, be kind to yourself on this path. Learning is not a linear progression upwards. It's more like a gently winding path with ups and downs. There will be days where everything clicks, and other days where you feel all thumbs. Sometimes you might plateau for a while, not seeing improvement. Remember the learning curve and that plateaus are natural. In those moments, trust that if you continue with your practice and use the strategies we've discussed, a breakthrough will come. Patience is truly a virtue in learning. You cannot rush the growth of a plant by tugging on its leaves. It needs time and steady care. Similarly, you can't force mastery overnight, but with steady nurturing of your skill and of your own motivation and mindset, you will see it bloom. Mindset and motivation form the gentle breeze that fills the sails of your journey. With a growth mindset, you see the voyage as doable and worthwhile, and with sound motivation, you have wind that keeps you moving even when the waters are calm or challenging. Together, they ensure that learning isn't just effective, but also personally meaningful and sustainable in the long run. The power of rest and renewal. In our quest to learn a new skill, it's easy to think that we must always be actively practicing or pushing ourselves. But one of the gentle yet most powerful allies in learning is rest. In recent years, neuroscientists have shed light on just how crucial breaks and sleep are for mastering new skills. It turns out that the times when we aren't practicing can be as important as the times we are. Have you ever been trying to solve a problem or learn a tricky passage of music, and after much effort, you set it aside in frustration, only to find that when you come back to it later or the next day, it somehow goes better? This common experience is not just luck. It reflects how our brains continue to process and organize information, even when we're not consciously working on it. Studies have shown that during short breaks in practice, the brain can replay the activity we just learned at a faster speed, almost like it's rehearsing internally. For instance, if you practice a new piano exercise for a few minutes and then take a brief rest, your brain is quietly solidifying those patterns in the background. Many learners notice that they improve more during the pauses between practice sessions than during the session itself. It's as if the mind needs a moment of quiet to digest what it just experienced. This principle is often called consolidation, the process by which fragile new memories and skills are strengthened and stabilized into longer-term memory. Think of practice as planting seeds of learning. Rest and sleep are like the sunlight and water that help those seeds grow roots. Without rest, the seeds might remain on the surface, not fully taking hold. With adequate rest, they sink in and take shape in your mind. Short breaks during practice sessions are one way to let this happen. For example, if you're practicing something intensely, pause every so often. Step away for a few minutes, stretch, or just sit in silence. You might think you're wasting time, but paradoxically, you often come back performing better. Athletes use this technique as well. A sprinter might rest between sprints to allow their muscles and nervous system to recover and adapt, making the next sprint more efficient. The brain, like a muscle, benefits from cycles of effort and recovery. Beyond short breaks, a full night's sleep is perhaps the most powerful learning enhancer we have. While we sleep, our brains go through cycles of activity that reactivate and reorganize the experiences of the day. In deep stages of sleep, the brain replays sequences of activity from our waking learning, helping to strengthen those neural connections. Later, during REM sleep, when we often dream, the brain may integrate those new memories with existing knowledge, sometimes finding creative new connections. Ever heard the phrase "sleep on it"? It's age-old advice because people observe that after sleeping they could often remember something they had struggled with the day before, or even solve a problem that had them stumped. Modern science confirms this. Sleep dramatically improves our ability to recall information and to perform skills we've practiced. In fact, being well rested before learning is also crucial. When we're tired, our capacity to absorb new information drops significantly. It's like trying to paint on a canvas that's already wet and smudged. Nothing sticks well. One researcher famously found that pulling an all-nighter, staying awake through the night, can impair learning ability by a large percentage the next day. That is why, for example, studying all night before an exam often backfires. The brain simply isn't in a good state to take in or retain information. On the other hand, getting a good night's sleep after a practice session or study period can improve retention, sometimes making you perform noticeably better the next time you practice the skill. For physical skills, sleep also helps with muscle memory and coordination. Someone learning a new sport or dance might find that movements feel more natural after sleeping, as if the body remembers better after the brain has had time to encode the patterns during the night. Even short naps can provide a mini boost to learning. A 20-minute nap or a longer 90-minute nap, which can include a full sleep cycle, can help refresh the mind and cement what was recently practiced. Naps are like tiny overnight sleeps that can be beneficial, though it's best they don't replace proper nighttime rest. Considering that you might be listening to this as you drift off, you're actually doing something beneficial for learning. By exposing your mind to ideas about learning while in a relaxed, drowsy state, you're priming your brain with positive and useful concepts, and then allowing sleep to take them in more deeply. Even if you don't consciously remember every detail we discuss, and you certainly don't need to, trust that your brain is processing some of it in the background. The calm state you achieve before sleep, perhaps even the beginnings of dreams, can help consolidate the day's learning and prepare you for tomorrow. It's beautiful to realize that sometimes the best way to improve is to not actively try at all, but to let go and rest. Think of an artist who, after working intently on a painting for hours, steps back and decides to leave it be for the day. The next morning, with fresh eyes, the artist immediately sees what touch is needed to complete the piece, something that was hard to perceive in the thick of effort the night before. Our brains work similarly. They need that stepping back to see the whole picture. So as you incorporate all the strategies and hard work of learning a new skill, remember to also incorporate gentleness and rest. Build pauses into your practice. Make sleep a priority, especially after intensive learning days. If you ever feel guilty for taking a break, remind yourself that rest is not a waste of time. It's an active part of learning. In those quiet moments, your amazing brain is doing exactly what it needs to do, cleaning up, strengthening, and organizing the new connections you have formed. In our busy world, we often feel we must be constantly doing something to progress. But here, as we wind down this journey of learning about learning, we embrace the quiet, the stillness. In that stillness, growth continues in its subtle way. The seeds of knowledge you've planted are given space to take root. When you return to your practice after a good rest, you may find new sprouts of insight and ability have appeared. As we prepare to conclude our exploration, it's fitting that we find ourselves in a relaxed state, perhaps on the verge of sleep. This is exactly the state in which so much learning magic happens, beneath the surface, gently and naturally. Let's take comfort in knowing that doing less at the right time can actually help us learn more. With that comforting thought, we can drift fully into a state of rest, allowing the mind to do its quiet nightly work. A gentle learning journey, a story. Let's take a moment to bring all these ideas together in a simple, soothing story of one person's journey in learning a new skill. Imagine a woman named Maya who decides in her quiet evenings to learn the art of painting. It's something she's always been curious about. She envisions creating soft watercolor landscapes to relax herself, but she's a complete beginner. On the first evening, Maya unrolls a fresh sheet of paper and sets out her paints. She feels a flutter of uncertainty. Her first brushstrokes are shaky, the colors muddle a bit, and the little landscape she tries to paint doesn't quite match the serene image in her mind. But Maya remembers to keep a gentle mindset. Instead of saying, "I'm no good at this," she takes a breath and thinks, "I'm learning, and this is just the beginning." With a small smile, she writes the date on the back of this first painting and sets it aside, thinking of it as a baseline, not a verdict. Each week, Maya dedicates a few calm evenings to painting. At first, she doesn't have a formal teacher, so she finds guidance in books and online videos that break down techniques. One video shows her how to mix colors to get just the right shade of twilight blue. Another demonstrates how to hold the brush for different stroke effects. Following these guides, she practices simple things first, making gradients of color, painting basic shapes and lines. These exercises might seem humble, but they are building her foundation. She's essentially finding a guide and starting small, like we discussed. In these early sessions, she limits distractions. She turns off her phone, plays soft instrumental music in the background, and truly focuses on the feel of the brush in her hand. Maya also discovers the value of observation. On weekends, she visits a local art gallery where a landscape painting by a skilled artist catches her eye. She spends long minutes gazing at the painting, noticing how the artist layered the colors of the sky and created depth with shadows. At home, Maya attempts to emulate a small part of that style, just the way the trees were done in the distance. By observing and then imitating, she finds her own technique improving. It feels almost like having a mentor, though the mentorship comes through the artwork she studied. She also watches video clips of watercolor painters at work, letting their confident movements imprint on her mind. Later, as she tries a similar stroke, she recalls the image of their hand moving and it guides her. Bit by bit, the once unfamiliar actions start to feel more natural. In her third week, Maya hits a frustrating point. She tries to paint a twilight sky with a gradient from deep blue to purple to pink, but the colors bleed in unintended ways and the paper gets too wet. The result is not what she hoped for. Tired and a touch discouraged, she feels the old tug of doubt. Maybe I'm just not cut out for this. But this time she remembers the importance of breaks and patience. Instead of forcing herself to fix it immediately, she cleans her brushes, sets the painting aside and makes herself a cup of herbal tea. She sits by the window, listening to the night sounds, letting her mind rest. The next day, after a good night's sleep, she returns to her painting. To her surprise, what looked like a mishap before now seems salvageable. In fact, the right colours have a soft, blurred beauty to them. She gently adds a silhouette of distant hills in black against the twilight. The contrast brings the whole scene together. What was nearly a failure becomes perhaps her favourite piece so far. She realises that stepping away was exactly what she needed. The painting bloomed in the rest period, and her fresh eyes saw possibility where earlier there was only disappointment. Maya continues this journey for months. She keeps all her paintings and now and then flips back to see her progress. Where early on her brushstrokes were hesitant, now they are more confident and fluid. She remembers how she used to struggle to mix the right colour. Now she instinctively knows how to get the hue she wants, because she learned through repetition and a bit of trial and error. She's even sought feedback. She joined a small local art class that meets on weekends. There, an instructor gave her gentle pointers, such as using a drier brush for certain textures, and fellow hobbyists offered encouraging words. The community experience reminds her that learning has a social side. Seeing others' works and hearing their struggles and successes keeps her motivated. One of her new friends in class shows her a neat trick for painting clouds by dabbing with a tissue. Maya incorporates that into her own practice, grateful for the shared knowledge. Throughout her learning process, Maya stays mindful of her motivation. By now, she simply enjoys painting. It has become a relaxing ritual at the end of her day. She also recalls her initial goal of creating calming landscapes. Whenever she finishes a piece, she tapes it on the wall in her bedroom. It doesn't matter that they aren't perfect. To her, each one is a testament to her growth and a piece of beauty she created. Looking at them gives her a gentle sense of accomplishment and joy. This positive feedback fuels her to keep going. On tougher days when a painting isn't turning out well, she glances at the earlier works on the wall and remembers how far she's come. If I learned all that, she tells herself, I can learn this new technique too. It just takes time. There are evenings when she doesn't feel like painting. On those days, she doesn't force it. Sometimes she'll just doodle casually or mix a few colours without a plan, treating it like play rather than practice. She's learned to listen to herself. Surprisingly, those playful, low-pressure sessions often end up teaching her something new, an unexpected colour blend, or a shape that sparks an idea for a future painting. By giving herself permission to have easy days, she maintains her love for the hobby without burnout. After about a year, one quiet night, Maya is working on a twilight landscape, similar to the one that frustrated her so much in the beginning. She lays down the washes of colour smoothly. She adds the silhouette of hills and leafless autumn trees against the vibrant sky. With delicate care, she places a few stars in the twilight. Stepping back, she realizes the scene on the paper matches the peaceful image she had long held in her mind. It's not perfect by any means, but it has the mood and balance she was aiming for. She feels a warm glow of satisfaction. Not because this painting is the end point. In fact, she knows she will continue to learn and refine her art, but because it represents how far she has come. Every gentle effort, every practice, every break and renewed attempt, every tip from a friend, every moment of observation, and every instance of pushing through doubt led to this result. Maya's story is just one example, but within it, we can recognize the elements of effective learning we've talked about. She found guidance and broke the skill into manageable parts. She practiced deliberately and regularly. She learned from observing others. She kept a positive, growth-oriented mindset. She stayed motivated by finding enjoyment and meaning in the process. She sought feedback and community, and she balanced effort with rest and reflection. Her journey, taken step by step, turned something that once seemed daunting into a pleasurable routine and a personal accomplishment. As you imagine Maya cleaning her brushes and tidying her workspace after finishing her painting, perhaps you can picture the contented smile on her face. The room is quiet, and her final painting of the day dries softly on the table. In that calm moment, there is a sense of completion and also of continuity. She'll paint again another day and continue to improve. Because learning truly never ends. Maya's gentle journey reminds us that with persistence, patience, and heart, the process of learning a new skill can itself be a beautiful experience, one that enriches our days and slowly but surely unlocks our potential. You too can approach your own learning adventures in this way, calmly, kindly, and with quiet confidence that, like Maya, you will grow and blossom in your own time. Never too late, learning at any age. Before we conclude, let's gently remind ourselves that the door to learning is open at every age. Whether one is a child, a young adult, or well into their golden years, the principles of learning remain remarkably similar, and so do the rewards. The mind, with proper care and stimulation, retains a wonderful ability to adapt and grow. Imagine a man named Thomas, who at 70 years old decides to learn to play the piano. It's something he always dreamed of, but never had the chance to pursue in his busy working life. Now retired, he finds himself drawn to the instrument. Thomas's hands are not as steady as they once were, and he chuckles softly at himself when they fumble over the keys in the beginning. But he also has something decades of life have given him: patience. In the quiet morning light of his living room, he places his fingers on the keys and practices simple scales. Slowly, do, mi, fa, so. At first, each note deliberate and separated like steps of an old ladder. He practices a little each day, cherishing the journey rather than hurrying toward a destination. Thomas uses many of the techniques we've discussed, perhaps without even realizing it. He breaks songs into small parts, learning just the right hand melody first, then the left hand part before putting them together, chunking the task. He recalls advice from a book he read on piano for beginners, which suggested visualizing the keyboard and hearing the music in your head. In the evenings before bed, he imagines playing a simple tune. his mind rehearsing what his fingers will do the next morning. He notices that on days when he feels a bit frustrated, taking a rest day or simply listening to his favourite recordings gives him renewed energy. And he's not shy about being a beginner. In fact, he shares his new hobby with his grandchildren, who become his little audience, clapping enthusiastically for Grandpa's songs. One weekend, Thomas attends a local community centre group for adult music learners. There he meets others in their 60s, 70s, even 80s, each learning an instrument or a skill like singing. They exchange stories and tips. One woman says she's learning Spanish online to be able to chat with her young granddaughter, who is bilingual. Another gentleman talks about how he started doing watercolour painting at 65. They all agree, learning something new at their age has brought a special kind of joy and freshness to their lives. It's not about achievement or grades or career advancement for them. It's about the sheer pleasure of discovery and keeping their minds engaged. Thomas finds this community encouraging. He picks up a tip from a fellow pianist about how to strengthen finger muscles with gentle exercises, and in return shares how he uses sticky notes on the keys as reminders for tricky parts of a song. As the months go by, Thomas finds that his fingers have grown more nimble. To his delight, he can play a simple waltz now without needing to constantly look at the keys. One afternoon, his daughter overhears him playing and remarks on how lovely it sounds. Thomas smiles, remembering how just a year ago he was almost afraid to start because he felt too old. Now he sees that was just a mental barrier. Not only has he learned to play music at 70, but he's also felt his mind light up with each new skill gained. He feels more youthful in spirit, proving that learning truly keeps one's mind young. This gentle tale of Thomas is a testament. It is never too late to learn. The principles we've explored, practice, observation, mindset, and rest, apply no matter when you start. In some ways, older learners have advantages. They often have more patience, and they can draw on a wealth of experiences to connect with new skills. Thomas's life of listening to music, for instance, helped him feel the emotion in the pieces he played, and even if his fingers were new to the task. Older learners might take a bit longer to memorize or might prefer to go at a slower pace, but often they savor the process deeply. Modern neuroscience confirms that the brain remains adaptable and plastic, capable of forming new connections well into later life, especially when we keep challenging and using it. In other words, our brains can adapt and learn at any age, given the opportunity. So, no matter the age, the journey of learning can continue. Indeed, the brain has a remarkable capacity to adapt well into later life. So if you ever think to yourself, can I really start something new at my age? Remember Thomas at his piano in the morning sun? Or perhaps think of your own past experiences, times when you surprised yourself by learning something when you least expected to. The brain has a remarkable capacity to adapt well into later life. Especially with curiosity and practice, it remains receptive to new skills. Lifelong learning is not just a saying, it's a reality that brings cognitive stimulation, emotional enrichment, and often a sense of purpose. No matter if you are 9 or 90, stepping onto the path of learning a new skill is always a brave and rewarding thing to do. It keeps us engaged with the world and with ourselves. It reminds us that we are always capable of change and growth. In this way, lifelong learning is not just a slogan, it is a gentle way of life. An acknowledgement that we are all truly lifelong students in the vast and beautiful school of the world. Conclusion: embracing the journey. Good night. Now, as our gentle exploration draws to a close, let's take a moment to appreciate the peaceful wisdom we've gathered. Learning a new skill is truly a journey, one that can be approached with calm and confidence at any stage of life. We've seen how ancient masters valued practice, how modern science uncovered the secrets of memory, how our mindset shapes our growth, and how rest and patience are just as vital as effort. All these threads weave together into a simple, reassuring truth. You can learn, you can improve, and you can enjoy the process along the way. Perhaps as you lie here, you can recall something you've learned in your own past. It could be anything. Maybe as a child you learned to tie your shoes or ride a bicycle, or later in life you learn to cook a favorite recipe or use a new technology. At the very beginning, it might have seemed tricky or even impossible, but little by little, with practice and guidance, it became second nature. You likely don't even think about the steps involved now, they flow naturally. That is the gift of learning. What once required great conscious effort eventually becomes a smooth, integrated part of us. Reflect on that for a moment and give yourself credit. You have learned many things in your life, and each time you followed a path, not unlike the one we've talked about tonight, even if you didn't realize it. The next time you find yourself at the start of learning something new, remember to be gentle and patient with yourself. You have a toolkit of quiet strategies now. You know to break things down into small steps, to focus your practice thoughtfully, to watch and learn from others, to keep your mindset open and positive, to listen to your motivation, and to give yourself needed rest. You can trust the process, the same process humans have followed for ages. Trust that progress will come with each calm effort. Feel free to let these thoughts float through your mind without any pressure. Even if you don't remember every detail we discussed, that's all right. What's important is that a seed of understanding is planted. Your subconscious will remember the kindness in this approach to learning, that it doesn't have to be a struggle filled with worry, but can be a slow, enjoyable growth, like a flower blooming at its own pace. As you sink deeper into the comfort of your bed, you can let go of any remaining thoughts. Know that everything we've talked about will settle in your memory naturally. There's nothing you need to do right now except rest. In this relaxed state, you are already helping your brain sort and store the insights of the day. You are doing exactly what we advised, taking a peaceful pause so that new knowledge can take root and strengthen. As you lie here in the quiet, you might imagine that with each gentle breath, you are breathing in calm and breathing out any tension. The day's lessons are whispering through your mind, not demanding attention, just drifting kindly like clouds across the sky of your thoughts. And as they drift, they will make their way into your long-term memory in their own gentle fashion. When you awake, you may carry with you a refreshed perspective on learning, a subtle confidence that whatever new skill or challenge awaits you, you can approach it with ease and curiosity. But for now, you don't need to think about any of that. You can simply enjoy this moment of rest, knowing that you've spent this time nurturing your mind in a positive way. Thank you for allowing me to share this journey with you. It has been a calm voyage through ideas and time, and I hope it has brought you comfort and perhaps inspired the learner within you. Keep that gentle flame of curiosity alive, but also honor the night and the need for rest. It's time now to let everything fade into a soft, restful silence. You've earned a deep and peaceful sleep. Feel the weight of your body supported by the bed and the lightness of your thoughts as they finally give way to dreams. I wish you wonderful learning experiences ahead, and for tonight, a truly refreshing sleep. Good night.